Hey, round 7. Let's keep this complete. There was an important game in round 7. Before the round, let's check the standings. And we'll see that Magnus, Carlsen and Wesley So are leading with only +1. And this means that basically any one of the 6 players on equal score can join them by winning. So it's easier to look at the score as +1 or -1 or equals, because with the withdrawal of Ding Liren, some of the players haven't played the same number of games. So +1 for Carlsen and So, and after this game we will have one more player joining them on +1. Let's dive into it. It's MVL with white against Vishy Anand. Found a picture of Vishy bossing from the 90s. So yeah, MVL with the white pieces goes e4, e5. Now the question is, will we get a Spanish or the Italian? MVL has been playing some Italian, but in this game he opts for bishop to b5. a6, bishop to a4. No Berlin this time. Knight f6. After castles, Anand goes for his, well, one of his old favorites, knight takes e4, the open Spanish. This was also the favorite of Viktor Korchnoi and Ivan Sokolov for a while, I believe. And it's an interesting variation. It's been kind of on the shelf, but it's been played every now and then. The main line goes like this: d4, b5. This is what happened in the game. Bishop to b3, d5, and d takes e5. The pawn being attacked. Now bishop e6 is played. Yeah, long time weapon of Anand, and he even played it in his World Championship match against Garry Kasparov in a very, very famous game where Kasparov prepared nicely and sacrificed the rook and won. Just wiped Vishy off the board, but mostly preparation, but so beautiful. Anyway, in the current game, MVL with white. Okay, now comes the choice. You can play c3 or knight b to d2. Knight b to d2 usually leads to knight to c5. In the current game, MVL played c3. I once played in the European Club Cup. I was on the second board from a team, and on board 1 my friend Robert, he was playing against MVL, and he did play this variation. So definitely not the first time that MVL is playing on the white side of an open Spanish. Bishop to e7. If you're a history buff, the variation with bishop c5 is very interesting. It's called the Dilworth attack. After castles, bishop c2 and knight takes f2. A very interesting variation will occur now, where black will sacrifice 2 pieces, but he will get a rook and a pawn. Usually place goes along these lines. So 2 pieces for white and a rook and a pawn for black. But black has an attack, some initiative, and some interesting historical games by Yusupov, to name a few. Well, mostly Yusupov played this. But no such adventures in this game. Bishop e7 by Vishy, knight b to d2. Castles and rook to e1. My natural question is, why not take on e4? Looks like we're doubling a lot of pawns, but on the other hand, the main thing is that this pawn is going to drop next move, and black has no problems here. So rook to e1. Yeah, you can count on these guys to play the most established theory in these lines. Knight to c5. Maybe white was starting to think about taking on e4, taking on d8, and then at some point taking on e4, but now knight to d4. Knight takes d4, c takes d4. And now it looks quite natural to, get the bishop pair with knight takes b3, but Anand did not do that. The thing is, after knight takes b3, very quickly white will gain a very nice control over the c5 square, where you can put a knight or some other pieces, maybe even knight a5 to to c6 as an option in some cases. And this you kind of don't want. Good control by white. So Vishy opted for knight to d3. Now rook e3 by MVL. And curiously, we are following a game between Alexei Shirov and Magnus Carlsen, played in 2007. That's a long time ago, which Alexei managed to win. Knight to f4. Yeah, Magnus took on c1, but Vishy went with knight to f4. After knight f3, bishop to g4. It becomes clear that Vishy likes this square e6 as a blockading square for the knight, and the knight keeps the position quite nicely together. h3, bishop to h5, and rook c3, the first novelty of the game. Usually when it's a novelty, it's the first one. But yeah, rook c3. There was one game by Jiangchang Ye, who was a grandmaster who played bishop c2 here, but rook c3 was the first new move by MVL. There followed knight to e6, a very nice square for the knight, blockading square. If it's not harassed by f4, f5 at any stage, then it stands quite nicely. And now an aggressive move by MVL, and perhaps the first move that we can criticize a little bit, because, well, the pawns don't move backwards, and in the game it turned out that the kingside became quite weak. Bishop e3, getting ready for plans like this. And here Anand felt like he was still, you know, struggling for equality, and he went a5 here, trying to get some play on the queen side, or at least disrupt white's play on the queen side. Bishop to c2 and bishop to b4. Now rook to b3, and it's clear that white wants to play a3 and simply harass this pawn. But here Anand showed his instinct. He felt that, you know, he needed counterplay, and where to get the counterplay other than on the king side, and he felt that the move played was absolutely necessary, and he played f5, trying to blow up on the king side. Now some alternatives. He took an f6, but let's say we play a3. In that case, bishop must go back to e7, and okay, if we capture the pawn, which probably isn't the best move, then black starts to open up. F takes g4. Notice that h takes, we take on c2, and you lose a piece here. And if you play bishop takes g6, I take on f3, and things become a bit hairy for white on the queen side, on the king side. So MVL opted for en passant, e takes f6, exchange on c2, and queen takes f6. So this knight is attacked. It went to e5, and now an exchange sacrificed by Vishy. He doesn't want to get white to get a bind like this, knight c6 perhaps, when the bishop is attacked and things start to get undermined. So he just plays very aggressively and dynamic chess here with c5, allowing knight d7, capturing the exchange. But we see now that Vishy has a lot of active pieces. This knight is still excellent. Depending on what happens, it's supporting this. If the bishop were to go away, we can jump in. A very nice configuration of queen and rook on the f-file. The queen can jump to f3. This is vulnerable. And the bishop, okay, not the best, but it is keeping the queen side together and keeping this rook inactive. Well, these ideas, you know, coming in maybe with queen f3, taking on d4, led to MVL figuring that queen f5 was the best choice here to exchange queens. If you look at alternatives, a move like a3, I'll play c4, your rook doesn't have a square, very similar to the trapped rook we had in Carlsen against Caruana in the blitz. D takes c5 is another option, but d4 is very strong there, and the computer suggests already there queen f5 is the best move as well. So probably queen f5 can't be criticized. Anand took on d4, and after a queen trade, it was up to MVL to make a move here, and perhaps this is still equal if he goes a3. If a3, black is more or less forced to play knight c5. I mean, if he moves the bishop, then okay, maybe bishop d2 and too many weak pawns. So knight c5, and now you can take a b4. ab, and bishop takes d4. This pawn is undefended. The knight going to c5 means that it can't keep control over this square. And this makes all the difference after knight b3, rook d1. The most likely outcome is a rook ending with equal pawns. Take on b5, take on a3, something like this with a dead draw. Some deviations possible, but it looks like it should have been really drawish. However, MVL took on b4. This might be the losing mistake. You know, after Vishy applied some very nice pressure. A takes b4, bishop to d2, and now b3. Okay, why allow white to take here and have, you know, this nice 2 against 1? Rather play b3 and have this basically useless 2 against 1. So this b5 pawn keeps 2 pawns intact. Rook f3 now, double attack. b4, keeping the b4 pawn, and now rook d3. An interesting moment. Anand felt that if he takes on h3, then rook h3, a3. And now if you trade, okay, a similar ending that arises in the game, probably still winning for black, but at least white has a 2 against 1 and has some options of pushing and hoping for a passer at some stage. At least some counterplay, but Anand found a better solution. He played rook d3, attacking the bishop, which doesn't have a lot of squares, counter-attacking the knight. Black just keeps it. The knight is much better, so you don't want to trade. Bishop to c1, and now he takes, and now there's no longer rook to a3. Rook e5 is played here, but to no avail. Rook to d3, threatening to check and win the bishop. King f1, rook d1, and now forcing the rook trade. There is not much in this. Black is up a pawn, great knight against virtually a dead bishop with no prospects, and most importantly, black can make a passed pawn with g6 and h5. He plays g6 immediately, f4, and black can play h5 here, but maybe some ideas by MVL to play f5 and complicate things in this, you know. In that case, it's still winning for black, I think, but why complicate things when you can keep them simple? We should play knight to d8, and now h5 is coming. MVL played g5, but after king e6, he realized there's nothing to play for, and he resigned the game. Black is simply coming in to f5, and it's gonna end in Zugzwang. Let's see a sample line like king e2, king f5, king f3. Now we bring the knight, big pressure on this pawn, and white basically only has, you know, back and forth moves with the bishop. And meanwhile we can play moves like this, because king e3, knight takes f4. So bishop e3, d4, bishop d2, and now we just reroute the knight d5. And eventually, okay, we're starting to come in here, play d2, so b3, and now back to d5, and it's Zugzwang for white. He can't find a move. If he moves the king, drops the pawn, and there are also ideas of knight c3 to a2, or b1 and play d2. So the final position, hopeless for white, and MVL resigned. So yeah, that was round 7 plus 1 for Vishy, who's hanging around. Catching up with Wesley and Carlsen, sorry. So Carlsen, Anand, and so looks like we're going to have a nice, exciting finish. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.